didn't want to say it.
Geordie Journos, Domsker flying solo today amid treacherous weather conditions here on Tyneside. Took me over an hour to get in. Jordan Cronin, he's not here. Did try his best, had to cover the press conference remotely, but I'm just about here. I did get delayed by about 10 minutes as well because of the weather. But Eddie Howe had plenty to say. It was a really quite entertaining press conference by Eddie Howe standards. Obviously, I'll start with the injury situation as always. Newcastle playing Manchester United in the Premier League this weekend. No injury boosts. We thought Sean Longstaff may have a chance. Joe Willock obviously suffered that injury last weekend, but neither player will be available for the game at St James's Park tomorrow evening. Sean Longstaff described as a not long-term injury, same with Joe Willock as well. Ankle for Sean Longstaff, Joe Willock a recurrence of that Achilles issue. So yeah, no new injury issues or returns for Newcastle as we understand it. That's according to Eddie Howe this morning. At least they will be boosted, if you like, by the return of Matt Ritchie and Emil Kraft after they missed the PSG game, which I'll get onto in a second. Eddie Howe was asked about that. They missed the PSG game in midweek due to not being in the Champions League squad, but they will undoubtedly bolster the bench on Saturday evening. Elsewhere, in terms of injuries, Sven Botman is back training individually, not back with the first team yet. Harvey Barnes, no real update on him. Still looks like that end of December, early January potentially return date for him. And then no one else said. The likes of Callum Wilson, Elliot Anderson, who I asked about, still looking like a good few weeks out and potentially into early 2024 for some of them. So yeah, that injury situation not really clearing up. I asked Eddie Howe about it, and then also taking the positives from the injury situation and the opportunity it has provided someone like Louis Miley, who has come into the side where he wouldn't have usually if you had Sandro Tonali, Sean Longstaff, Joe Willock all available. He's come into the side and just looked at home. We've spoke about him a few times on the Geordie Journos, and it's just been a real positive to come from a negative situation. And Eddie Howe addressed that as well. Also asked if this current spell in the team for Louis Miley could almost negate the need to send him out on loan to get experience, because being in and around a Premier League, Champions League squad, playing games, starting games at the moment, is going to do him the world of good at just 17 years old. And Eddie Howe said at the start of the season that he's almost too young to send out on loan at this stage, and staying in and around a professional setup, just as you hear the train outside, will only benefit him. So would be shocked to see Louis Miley go out on loan in January, and if he continues on the trajectory he is, maybe even next summer as well, he could surpass that, and Eddie Howe did recognise that as well in the questions asked. But moving on, there was a lot of questions obviously in the wake of the PSG game, the controversial VAR decision. Eddie Howe was asked about VAR. He's been really measured so far, and he continued to show his sort of class and calmness about what is a really frustrating situation for him and his side. He admits he gets angry, but he doesn't like to show it in a sort of professional setting like that, unless his anger can form a positive if it was behind the scenes or motivating players, things like that. So yeah, he has been so measured in dealing with what is a very controversial, a very harsh VAR decision against his side, that penalty that saw Kylian Mbappe net a 98th minute equaliser to deny Newcastle what would have been a historic win against PSG on Tuesday night. Eddie Howe spoke about how the VAR itself probably forced the referee to rethink his initial decision. He said the referee made the right decision in real time, and he said that should have been given more weight, and that is the real issue with VAR, the re-refereeing of games, where you're looking at decisions made by the referee. Is it a clear and obvious error? Sometimes when it's not, VAR intervenes, and if multiple people are watching a replay in slow motion at loads of different angles and are telling a referee who only has one chance in real time to make a split-second decision, if they're telling him, you've got that wrong, that doubt in the back of your mind is probably going to sway you. And Eddie Howe said that. He sort of suggested maybe the referee was swayed by the VAR telling him to check the monitor, as pretty much any referee is. And he was asked at length about VAR and whether he feels it's positive for the game, and his general answer was no, not really. The re-refereeing of games really needs to change. The handball rule is still so unclear and what that means. And he said, as he sits here now, he still doesn't really know what is and what isn't handball, which as a Premier League manager should never be the case. But he said VAR does have its merits in terms of offside decisions. Funnily enough, Newcastle benefited off an offside, a controversial VAR call which included an offside decision against Arsenal a couple of weeks ago in the Premier League, a few weeks ago now. But yeah, he said offside, it's very black or white. A player is either offside or isn't. VAR can still sometimes get that wrong, but at least it is quite, it's either one or the other. It's quite binary. So yeah, he said that has positives in the game, because players can be miles offside and goals given, and you don't want to see that. But yeah, generally, he said his main gripe with VAR is referees can make good decisions or not incorrect decisions, and then they get overturned, and it takes away the purity of the game in terms of the match itself being live in the stadium, and delays like that in the 95th, 96th minute of such an important Champions League game for Newcastle is just not what you want to see, and not what Eddie Howe wants to see. And he said his anger and his frustration was not necessarily at the decision itself, although he was very frustrated. It was for the fans, for the players who had worked so hard to take the lead and then protect that lead, and to get it taken away was very, very cruel indeed for his side. If you're wondering why I'm constantly swapping arms, I don't have the luxury of Jordan Cronin's selfie stick here today, which is why I'm a bit more zoomed in than usual. But yeah, moving on to the Manchester United game, the big game this weekend. Newcastle go into it. Obviously, they lost that game at Bournemouth, but the last two home games, beating Chelsea 4-1 and beating Arsenal 1-0. So 3 big home games in a row against big opposition, and they've taken maximum points so far. They go into this game, obviously on the back of a positive result, you still have to say, on Tuesday night. Manchester United also got a draw, but threw away a 2-goal lead against Galatasaray. Goalkeeper errors again, costing them, you could say. And Eddie Howe was asked about the goalkeeper situation and whether the sort of contrasting performances between Nick Pope and Onana for Manchester United and Newcastle sort of vindicated Newcastle's decision to go with a real traditional shot stopper in Nick Pope, opposed to a sweeper keeper, a false one, as one of my colleagues put it, in terms of Onana. The way he plays and the errors he's made quite regularly this season since signing for Manchester United. And Eddie Howe wouldn't get drawn into making comparisons between the two goalkeepers. He just couldn't praise Nick Pope enough. Obviously, his kicking has been the source of some criticism. It's probably the one shortcoming of his game, because every other area he's been excellent for Newcastle this season. Probably since that red card against Liverpool back in February, maybe his confidence took a knock, and some errors have started to creep into his game. But certainly on Tuesday night, made some brilliant saves. And Eddie Howe said he made one save. It's probably the best save he's seen live in the stadium, where that point blank tips it away. Barcola, I think it was, Bradley Barcola, tips it away. He said we thought that was in, and I agree, I thought that was in the ground as well. But an excellent save from Nick Pope. But moving on, yeah, looking at the two goalkeepers, Eddie Howe just said he wouldn't get drawn into comparing goalkeepers, but he's really quite satisfied with Nick Pope at the moment. And looking at Man U, it's obviously was a rivalry in the 90s, Manchester United, and always interesting games. Obviously petered out slightly. They always sort of intense, and the crowd do get up for it, and there's always that sort of rivalry carried on. But it sort of petered out when Newcastle weren't so good. But now they're back, if you like, and a threat to Manchester United. It's heated up again, and you've got the context of the Carabao Cup final. Newcastle beating Manchester United 3-0 in the Carabao Cup last month, beating Manchester United 2-0 at St James's Park last time out. So back-to-back wins against Manchester United. I'll have to look this up, but off the top of my head, I don't think Newcastle United have ever beaten Manchester United 3 times in a row. So correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I think that might be right though. And that, if they do that this weekend, that would be a great achievement against a sort of wounded Manchester United side. They're in still decent form in the Premier League, to be fair, but Champions League fate hanging by a thread, as is Newcastle's to a lesser extent, but after frustrating results in midweek. But yeah, Eddie Howe was asked about sort of the comments he's made regarding Erik ten Hag in the past to use as motivation to his players. Obviously, Erik ten Hag said Newcastle are one of the biggest time wasters in terms of gamesmanship in the Premier League, one of the best at doing that, and they like to play a slow game and things like that. Eddie Howe used that as motivation back in the previous meeting between Manchester United and the Premier League at St James's Park last season as motivation. And yeah, that motivation seemed to work, and they got a 2-0 win. And since then, beaten Manchester United 3-0 in the Carabao Cup, as I said before. So Eddie Howe was asked about that. He didn't really say too much. He said it's in the past now. Obviously, you use things as motivation behind the scenes, but Manchester United, they're still, although they've had some, they're not in at the level they once were. Manchester United are still one of the best teams around, and can still get top results. And yeah, generally speaking, they are in good form. They're above Newcastle in the Premier League, so a win for Newcastle would take them above Manchester United, and heading into a really busy fixture schedule with a depleted squad. These home games are going to be really important for Newcastle, heading into the back-to-back away games against Everton and Spurs over the next 7 days or so. So, yeah, Manchester United's obviously a huge test. 8 o'clock kickoff under the lights at St James's Park. Other than the Dortmund game in the Champions League, Newcastle have never lost under the lights at St James's Park. That's another pointless stat for you. But there you go. Newcastle looking good heading into this game, apart from the injury situation, and they're looking to make it back-to-back wins after the international break. Build on that in the Premier League, at least build on that positive result against Chelsea last time out at St James's Park, and show that the confidence isn't too far knocked from a cruel decision against them at PSG on Tuesday night. And Eddie Howe mentioned also, in regard to the VAR decision, Newcastle have contacted UEFA, not him personally, not Eddie Howe personally, but Newcastle have contacted UEFA to seek clarity over the decision made, the penalty decision itself. So, yeah, UEFA, we've seen guidance from UEFA where it makes it quite clear that the penalty decision was incorrect. Guidance issued by UEFA last season said if a handball comes as a result of the ball deflecting off a player's body and the hand isn't, or the arm or elbow in Tino Livramento's case, isn't in an unnatural position. Bearing in mind it's real split-second stuff as well when you look at it in real time. If that happens, that should not be given as handball. So that decision from the VAR and the referee as well went against UEFA guidance as well issued last season. So there was quotes from Alan Shearer this morning as well where he said UEFA won't be issuing a direct statement in response to the results. They may well respond subsequently to Newcastle privately, but he said the people he spoke to at UEFA were angry and disappointed by the decision, which obviously went against their own guidelines. So is it a silver lining? I'm not sure. As Eddie Howe said, the result's gone. It's 1-1. Newcastle have to deal with it. They're not going to get any replays, despite what some of their Premier League managers may try and demand. But yeah, they've got the result now. They move on. Big game this weekend against Manchester United, and they'll be hoping for another 3 points. And I'll be joined, thankfully, sort of stumbled through this on my own, with Jordan Cronin and Liam Kennedy, of course. Jordan Cronin couldn't be here because of the snow situation, and Liam Kennedy, obviously, he doesn't bother with these press conferences. He's too big time, but likes to attend St James's Park. So we'll all be back. The Geordie Journos reunited at St James's Park for a big game tomorrow night. Newcastle United v Manchester United. We'll do a video on that, a live stream as usual from Liam as well at the full-time whistle. So if you like what we're doing, the response to the PSG videos, or the videos we made in Paris, was excellent, so really appreciate that. But obviously, if you like what we're doing and want to see more of it, please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, check out our channel. We'll do videos regularly unless it's an international break and we're on holiday, as people like to point out. But yeah, we'll be doing videos a few times a week, and we'll be at the game tomorrow, at Everton on Thursday, and then Spurs on the Sunday. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Geordie Journos. Cheers.